So a few weeks ago, I made a podcast segment basically talking about how there is no justice in the bantamweight division of the UFC. And as we go ahead to what's going to be happening this weekend, I have to be corrected on that. It almost seems like at least there might be some justice in the bantamweight division of the UFC. This weekend, there's going to be a fight for an interim bantamweight championship of the world. And as skeptical as I usually am about interim championships, this is one that actually does seem like it's very necessary. The current champion, Aljamain Sterling, I almost misspoke and said that it was Peter Yan. It is in fact Peter Yan, who, as we go on through this, I will just remind everybody that my opinion of him as a fucking idiot has not gotten any better. It has in fact gotten worse. But regardless, the current champion, Aljamain Sterling, no matter what you might think of the way that he won that championship, and no matter what you might think of his reasons for postponing his first championship defense, he's not going to be in that fight. So now we're seeing that between Peter Yan and Cory Sandhagen. Cory Sandhagen is a guy who has deserved this opportunity for a very, very long time now. And it just seemed like no matter what happened, it felt like circumstances were conspiring against him getting this championship opportunity. So first, of course, it was the controversy in that fight between Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling, where Peter Yan hit Aljamain Sterling with an illegal knee, which ended the fight, which ended his championship reign. And so a lot of people insisted that that fight had to be rolled back. Now, I'm not actually one of those people. I'm actually one of the people who thought that, quite frankly, the UFC should be refusing to run that fight back, except under one circumstance, and that was, of course, if Aljamain Sterling decided that he had to take that fight, to validate his championship reign in the eyes of a lot of fans, and so that was what Aljamain Sterling had apparently decided. So that being said, the next fight for the Bantamweight Championship was pretty much set. And so what happened after that? Well, TJ Dillashaw finally came back from his suspension. And so TJ Dillashaw, he needed an opponent. Cory Sandhagen needed an opponent, and the UFC needed a clear and undisputed number one contender. For who was going to be the number one contender after the Sterling and Yan rematch. And so they made a match between Cory Sandhagen and TJ Dillashaw. And TJ Dillashaw actually wound up winning that fight. Now, not everybody seems to agree that he did win that fight, but on paper, officially, TJ Dillashaw won that fight, and so TJ Dillashaw should be the number one contender, except that. All this time later, not only is Aljamain Sterling out with a neck injury, but TJ Dillashaw is also out with a number of injuries resulting from his fight with Sandhagen. And so now what do we see? We see this situation where we're going to have that interim championship fight between two guys who were both losers their last time out. And so, of course, the premise of the previous segment that I did a few months ago was that if Cory Sandhagen wasn't getting that championship fight, then there wasn't any justice in the bantamweight division. And so now that he is getting a championship fight, you would almost think that maybe there is some justice in the bantamweight division. Well, I wouldn't say that there is, but there definitely could be if Cory Sandhagen beats Peter Yan. Because make no mistake about it, all of this time later, I am not convinced any more now than I was then. Peter Yan, flat out, does not deserve another championship fight. I think he should go back to the undercard. I think he should go back to the prelims until such a time that he has shown that he can abide by the unified rules of this sport. And if he can't, then he needs to be gone altogether. But over the time since he lost the Bantamweight Championship of the world, Peter Yan has shown absolutely no signs of humility. He's shown us no sign that he's learned anything from the experience. As a matter of fact, he's been on his Twitter, he's been taunting Aljamain Sterling about the way that he lost the Bantamweight Championship, when in fact, he has nobody to blame for that but himself. He lost it because he was disqualified for throwing an illegal strike that ended a fight. He was the one that threw that illegal strike, and he was the one who was responsible to know that that strike was illegal, and so he is the one who's responsible for doing it. End of conversation. But not only has he shown absolutely no contrition for that, but he actually went out in his public workout this last week and he actually made fun of the whole thing again. He actually kind of replicated the whole thing as if it was some kind of a great big joke. This is a guy who obviously he wasn't taking the rules seriously back then, and he's obviously not taking the rules seriously now. So if you're Dana White, what the hell do you do about this situation? I think in a perfect world, you would pull that fight, you would release that fighter. You know, if I had my way, if the world were perfect and they did exactly what I thought that they should do in this situation, yeah, Peter Yan, that would be it. He'd be gone from the UFC right now. But of course, then that leaves Dana White with a very, very, very serious question. You know, a big problem. Is that tomorrow night, you know, as of the recording of this, these fights are going to be tomorrow night. He has Peter Yan and Cory Sandhagen in the co-main event of a very, very big card that's actually going to be on free TV. Huge opportunity to promote the sport, to get more eyes to it. 2 championship fights on the card, and if he's pulling one the week of, kind of takes the shine off the event a little bit. You can't even really withdraw the championship from it. You could still go ahead with the fight, take away the championship. But then, of course, you would also be punishing Cory Sandhagen. Can't do that. So in this particular case, how do you deal with Peter Yan? And I think it's as simple as that you hope and you pray that Cory Sandhagen goes out and turns his head into a souvenir for somebody in the front row. Like literally just goes out, knocks him out, knocks his head off. I'm barely speaking figuratively. I am almost speaking literally. That's how seriously I think that Peter Yan needs to be busted the hell out of this sport. Now, unfortunately, I have an absolutely abysmal record when it comes to trying to predict the winners of MMA fights. I'm terrible at it. As a matter of fact, I can't think of one. Okay, maybe the last Greg Hardy fight. I think I actually made that to be a prediction that Tai Tuivasa was going to knock him out, and it did happen. But other than that, my record is absolutely terrible. So I'm not going to predict an end for this one. Chael Sonnen, he actually has come out and he has made a prediction that Cory Sandhagen is going to come out with this fight. But unfortunately, you know, Chael Sonnen, you know, I mean, he's the greatest that there's ever been. He's never lost, not even a round. He's never wrong. But somehow I just keep getting like the intergalactic cable, you know, the interdimensional cable feed of all of these UFC fights, and every time that Chael Sonnen makes a prediction, it turns out to be wrong. So with that in mind, it kind of makes me a little bit less hopeful for what we're going to see tomorrow night, that there's actually going to be some justice in the bantamweight division. But we can at least certainly hope to see it. And I know that I certainly do. You know, I hope to see Peter Yan get knocked the fuck out tomorrow night.